the first week of September. I'm your new host, Moon Gun-young, and this is Foreign Correspondents. Joining me here in the studio today is our panel of foreign journalists. Welcome to the program. In the wake of months-long campaign of economic coercion by Japan, Seoul has decided not to renew an intelligence sharing pact with Tokyo, an alliance structure that's the backbone of the U.S.-led security architecture in Northeast Asia. So, what kind of stories did you guys write about GSOMIA?
I worked mostly on TV for this story, and what I did is actually just to provide some context. Most people in Germany don't know what GSOMIA is and what it actually means that GSOMIA didn't get renewed. So I really had to start from scratch, and I was really caught by surprise. I didn't expect that decision, and I was honestly quite shocked.
Right, Kelly, I want to ask you, what kind of stories did you have to write? Did you have to start from scratch like Fabian had to do?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, before this trade spat with Japan, I wasn't really well-versed in what GSOMIA is, and I think most Americans weren't as well. It's interesting because I actually wasn't surprised by the decision. I think there's been signaling going on since July from Tokyo and Seoul, and so when that actually happened and Seoul decided not to renew, I didn't write a story just about that. I was told to fold that into a greater story about Moon Jae-in's approach at the Midway Terminus presidency and how he's moving forward with North Korea and things like that. So it almost, to me, shows that in the United States, perhaps some of the news organizations aren't taking it that seriously.
In a press briefing, the presidential Blue House clearly pinned the blame on Japan for its decision to no longer share sensitive military information with Japan.
백색 국가 리스트에서 우리나라를 제외함으로써 양국 간 안보 협력 환경에 중대한 변화를 초래한 것으로 평가했습니다.
The top office added that Japan had also failed to show the proper level of respect and diplomatic protocol in its interactions with South Korea.
우리로서는 진심으로 편견 없이 일본과 강제징용 문제를 외교적으로 해결하기 위해 모든 방안에 대해 긍정적으로 검토할 용의가 있었었고 이러한 입장을 일본 측에 전달했습니다. 그러나 이에 대한 일본 측의 대응은 단순한 거부를 넘어 우리 국가적 자존심까지 훼손할 정도의 무시로 일관했고 외교적 결례를 범했습니다.
In response, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe urged the South Korean government to uphold its agreements made in the past.
まずは国と国との約束を守るよう求めていきたいと思っています。国と国との信頼関係が残念ながら損なわれる、信頼関係を損なうような対応が続いています。
Which party is the most to blame in your view regarding this matter? Because now we have to go back to the trade row that had been happening, which stemmed from a historical row that had been happening for decades.
I would hate to pin the blame on one side or the other, but I will say that from the Korean point of view, the Japanese are being extremely stubborn. Now, the Japanese haven't barred these exports. They've just said that they no longer are giving blanket approval for more than 1,100 products and 3 chemicals needed for semiconductors. Individual shipments have to be approved every time, vastly increasing the bureaucracy and delaying shipment. So, the Koreans say the Japanese are being very stubborn about this. And what's more, as far as GSOMIA is concerned, they're saying, well, maybe we could go back to GSOMIA if the Japanese would take back these constraints on trade. And the Japanese say, yes, but the Koreans are giving, some of this stuff is getting to North Korea. There's not a lot of evidence for that. The Koreans very strongly deny that anything is going to North Korea. So it's a very complicated struggle, which is going to go on for some time.
Can we even say that the decision not to renew GSOMIA is even linked to the trade road that had been ongoing?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, for example, when Japan started that trade war or the trade dispute, at first they were citing security concerns that maybe South Korea might export some sensitive material to North Korea. But they changed actually their narrative. So they retreated. They actually called some media offices in Europe and saying like, no, that's actually not the case. And also when you talk to the people at the embassy, now they changed their narrative to, okay, the trust is broken after the 2015 deal on the comfort woman issue, which Moon Jae-in cancelled. And now they're citing that as the main reason.
Because
so
that proved to be untrue.
Yeah, so to speak. So they changed their view.
Narrative.
So I think it's clearly a sign that for Japan it's linked to it's basically a political retaliation. And what concerns GSOMIA, I think, Moon Jae-in gave during Independence Day, he gave a speech which was quite, reaching out the hand to Japan. It was toning down the rhetoric.
지금이라도 일본이 대화와 협력의 길로 놓는다면 우리는 기꺼이 손을 잡을 것입니다.
But there was no answer at all, and there were a lot of diplomatic offenses, I would call. For example, at some working meetings to solve that issue, the Japanese, for example, were not wearing a proper jacket. I mean, that sounds like a small thing, but diplomatically, it's really it's not part of the protocol, and it shows a little bit of a rudeness of the Japanese. And I think many of those incidents have led to the decision to also cancel or not to renew GSOMIA.
GSOMIA was the first military agreement struck between South Korea and Japan following Korea's liberation from Japanese colonial rule in 1945. It was finally signed in 2016 after years of negotiations and one failed attempt to reach a deal in 2012. Do you believe GSOMIA was a beneficial deal for South Korea in sharing intelligence with Japan?
I believe it was. I mean, it's intelligence sharing, so we don't know how much this channel was actually used. It's not transparent, it's classified. But for example, when it's about North Korean missile threats, missile tests, then South Korea could use satellite technology of Japan, which is superior. So there is definitely one benefit going on there, and to detect what kind of missile it was. And now, of course, there's still a communication channel that runs via the US, but it's not directly. So between Japan and South Korea. So, for example, some precious time in those situations when there are missile tests is lost. So I think it's definitely. I think it's a lose-lose situation, actually.
Right, obviously, I mean, as much as you believe South Korea has benefited from this intel sharing agreement, Japan must have benefited from South Korea's intel sharing as well, as South Korea has intelligence that it achieves from North Korea. Now, Kelly, how do you feel about this? I mean, does it basically disassemble the security architecture in Northeast Asia?
I don't know at this point how apocalyptic the decision to not renew GSOMIA will be, but I do think that it's certainly a signal that things are destabilizing a little bit. I mean, if you look at the U.S. approach since the 1990s, the United States has kind of leveraged the North Korea issue to align South Korea and Japan for its own benefit, but also the benefit of those two countries, right? So in general, this has been kind of the overarching strategy on top of trade and other relations, is that they have this common enemy or common threat, and this security agreement is a way to kind of force an alliance between them. And so by obviously not renewing it, there's a question of, okay, where is the alliance at this point?
In regards to the concerns of a security vacuum due to the non-renewal of GSOMIA, the Blue House assured that the trilateral information sharing agreement between South Korea, the U.S., and Japan could ably fill in the void.
한일 지소미아가 이번에 종료됨으로써 안보와 관련된 군사 정보 교류 부족 문제에 대해서 우려하실 수 있습니다. 이에 대해서는 2014년 12월 체결된 한미일 3국 간 정보 공유 약정 TISA를 통해 미국을 매개로 한 3국 간 정보 공유 채널을 적극 활용해 나갈 것입니다.
Would you agree with that? Could this trilateral agreement or arrangement fill the void that's there?
Not quite. I think that intelligence goes beyond, trilateral information sharing. Intelligence means this material that's gleaned by satellites, and intelligence means material that comes from agents and so forth, and comes from other sources that we don't even know about. So I don't know how much difference this is really going to make, but I do think that we're talking about more than just information sharing. We're talking about valuable intelligence material on what many people would perceive as the enemy. Now, again, we get back to changing policy here in South Korea. I don't think President Moon wants North Korea to be regarded as the enemy anymore. He's making overtures, reconciliation, dialogue, summitry, and all of that. So I think there's a whole difference in perception as to who is the enemy.
Right. I mean, President Moon Jae-in's peace process has been ongoing ever since he took office in 2017.
북미 대화 재개와 한반도의 완전한 비핵화, 남북 관계와 북미 관계의 선순환 등 한반도 평화 프로세스를 진전시키기 위한 한미 간 공조 방안에 대해 깊은 논의를 하게 될 것입니다. 우리는 결코 과거로 돌아가지 않을 것이고 돌아갈 수도 없습니다.
We've seen the U.S. and White House say that they would like to see South Korea and Japan renew GSOMIA because of the threat posed by North Korea. Now, do you believe South Korea and Japan need to bolster their security cooperation in order to counter North Korea's provocations?
Well, I mean, that's something that you cannot enforce from the outside. And I think the US, I mean, of course, they would like to see it, but in the end, we have to acknowledge that that's the reality that both Japan and South Korea don't see themselves as key allies. I mean, that's wishful thinking. Actually, there's mutual distrust. You can see there are many examples also, like the military drills in Dokdo, around Dokdo. So it also shows that there's actually a deep fear, like there might be some kind of like military intervention even. I don't say it's maybe justified, but definitely like also because of the historic dispute between South Korea and Japan, that actually the mutual trust has never really grown. And I think you should really start from the scratch and have like more like cultural exchanges, human exchanges to try to improve the situation. And honestly, I think Japan has lost the historic chance of improving the relations during the generation that actually still like lived during the colonial time. I think now it's almost too late because I mean there were some like apologies by Japan, but not super sincere. And then also there you always had like governments that appealed to the far right of Japan, and then glorified the historic past of the colonial past of Japan, which angered the South Koreans. So I think now it's really a messed up situation.
Right. Now, we've seen North Korea basically pick up its missile provocation, missile test in recent weeks and months.
첫 시험 사격은 꼭 자신께서 지도해야만 한다고 하시며 모든 일을 미루시고 또다시 이른 새벽 머나먼 날바닷길을 달려오신 최고 용도자동.
How might North Korea be viewing this decision of South Korea not renewing GSOMIA with Japan?
Clearly, South Korea not renewing GSOMIA has to be good news for Kim Jong-un, for North Korea. It obviously represents a rift in trilateral cooperation. As noted, there is no alliance. And you have to wonder also, did President Moon decide to cancel GSOMIA in anticipation of more intense talks with North Korea? Was he attempting to get along better with North Korea by canceling GSOMIA? So that could be a factor as well, which we'll see. We're going to see how this turns out, how interested North Korea is in resuming talks. So I don't think we quite know yet. But certainly, the prospect of talks between the U.S. and North Korea does not seem very good. But maybe between South Korea and North Korea, maybe there will be renewed talks, and maybe cancellation of GSOMIA has something to do with that.
Seoul's decision to not renew GSOMIA has drawn mixed reactions from the U.S., including President Trump and his cabinet members. The Blue House said it was in close consultation with the U.S. when it made the decision not to renew GSOMIA and said it'll make determined efforts to strengthen the South Korea-U.S. military alliance.
정부는 이번 한일 갈등 문제를 비롯하여 한일 지소미아 문제에 대한 검토 과정에서 미주국과는 수시로 소통을 했고 특히 양국 NSC 간에는 매우 긴밀하게 협의를 했습니다. 정부는 이번 결정이 한미 동맹의 약화가 아니라 오히려 한미 동맹 관계를 한 단계 업그레이드 시켜 지금보다 더욱 굳건한 한미 동맹 관계가 될 수 있도록 노력해 나갈 것입니다.
What kind of stories did you write about the U.S. reaction, or did you even cover the U.S. reaction to this decision, South Korea's decision?
You know, I haven't covered it yet, and I think part of the reason is because it's been so lukewarm, right? It's almost like reporting almost nothing at all. In general, the United States has basically hinted that it's going to be harder to support South Korea because it pulled out of GSOMIA, or did not renew GSOMIA rather. And, you know, with the drills on Dokdo Island as well, the exact language that I saw from the State Department was it's, quote unquote, not productive, which isn't very strong language to begin with. I think we saw that the U.S. is just trying to stand in the middle of the road and not be swayed to either side ever since this issue was brought up in the WTO, and nobody stood up for South Korea. And I think that unless things get much, much worse, the United States is probably not going to pick a side, if you will.
Right, nobody stood up for either side, actually, at the WTO. Do you believe this could have a spillover effect on the ROK-US, so South Korea-US alliance as well?
Well, not necessarily, but definitely, like, while let's say the official reaction of the White House was rather lukewarm, if you talk to think tank experts, they were really outspoken.
They were.
Using, calling it even a stupid decision or a populist decision. And but rationally, it might seem so, but I think what they don't get is, like, there's also an emotional component to this decision and this, the historic dispute that goes really deep. I think, you know, both the US and the South Korean side, they always say this alliance is ironclad, and it's really like repeating that all the time. To me, actually, it seems that it might not be that ironclad as they always claim to be, because now President Moon has his own stance, basically emancipating the country a little bit from this alliance to have their own North Korea policy, which might not be in total alignment with the US foreign policy on North Korea. So, yeah, of course, they're key allies, and that's, I mean, definitely an important and essential, maybe more than ever, but still, I don't think that the alliance is, let's say, as good as it maybe was just 10 years ago.
Well, you know, just for the record, I would say South Korea's alliance with the U.S. is stronger than ever, quoting many, many high-level officials. And so South Korea-U.S. alliance from the South Korean side, I would say, is very strong. However, I just want to back Fabian up by saying that President Moon has said he would like to put national interest before anything else, even if that is South Korea-U.S. alliance. So,
which is a healthy decision, right?
Yeah, and which is a very healthy decision for the country. Do you think the decision not to renew this intel sharing pact with Japan could even have an effect on the issue of defense sharing, defense cost sharing with the U.S.? That's
another issue which is interrelated. President Trump has made what some people consider an outrageous suggestion that South Korea provide $5 billion toward the cost of U.S. troops and U.S. bases for 1 year. That's 5 times, approximately, what they paid last year, which was an increase over the year before. Now, that's a bargaining position. That's not going to happen. But nonetheless, you have to wonder about this demand. Will it result in endless haggling, which could also undermine the alliance along with the cancellation or the failure to renew GSOMIA? And one other element we should put in there is that the joint military exercises between the U.S. and South Korea are vastly smaller than they were before. This year they had basically command exercises on computers, which drew tremendous commentary from North Korea, but were not all that significant, except in terms of coordination between the command structures of the U.S. and Republic of Korea. But these are a far cry from the war games that they used to have in years gone by. So basically you have the sense that the alliance is, let's say, frayed at the edges, that it's not buckling, it's not going away, but you do have the sense of a somewhat weakening alliance.
Amid the controversy over GSOMIA, another spotlight has been cast on the current state of the U.S.-Japan military alliance. At the recent G7 summit, U.S. President Donald Trump and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe delivered mixed comments in regards to North Korea's latest missile tests.
I'm not happy about it, but again, he's not in violation of an agreement.
我々日本はですね、短距離弾道ミサイルも国連の決議違反であろうと思っておりますし、この短距離のミサイルの発射については危険という感じですね。
What is your assessment of U.S.-Japan alliance? Do you believe it's as strong as ever, Kelly?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty darn strong. It has been for a very long time. I'm not saying that it's stronger than the alliance with South Korea, right? But I do think that the U.S. and Japan, you know, they still have a key alliance. And like, unfortunately, if you look at Korean history, there's a question of, you know, what the United States' priority has historically been. For instance, if you look at the U.S. involvement with the Korean War, even a lot of that was done from the standpoint of protecting Japanese land, literally, because the United States had, if you will, started occupying it and found it valuable. So I guess, you know, to answer your question, I think there are tensions going on. I think there are tensions going on with most allies with the United States right now because Trump is not a conventional leader, right? And his aides do not match up with what he says half the time. Mm-hmm. So to analyze Japan alone, I mean, I don't know if there's any particular outstanding tension going on there.
On August 24th, and just 2 days after South Korea's decision not to renew the GSOMIA agreement, North Korea conducted yet another missile test, the 9th of the year so far. The current General Security of Military Information Agreement is valid until November this year. Do you believe that the GSOMIA agreement could be renewed somehow before November, so before it expires, depending on the outcome of this trade war and the pressing need for military information sharing?
Well, all things are possible. Mm-hmm. You know, it could be renewed. We could see that Japan relaxed on these constraints on trade and showed more understanding about the negotiations that South Korea insists are totally needed for compensation for workers who were basically enslaved during the Pacific War or World War II by huge Japanese companies. They could iron out some of these difficulties. If I had to bet, I wouldn't bet on that, but it's possible. You know, we have a little way to go, and perhaps under a lot of reconsideration and thoughtful, you know, a little bit of thought on the whole subject, perhaps Japan will ease up, lighten up a little, and perhaps the Republic of Korea, South Korea, will be open to negotiations and suggestions. I'm saying that's possible. Now, I wouldn't place money on it, so to speak, but you can't rule anything out. We can often be surprised. There have been many surprises in the course of recent Korean history, so who knows?
Now, the final question of this week. Let's wrap it up with a pitch of a headline. So pitch me headlines for South Korea's most important security agreement or security alliance, military alliance.
I will try to make it a short headline, but maybe it's a little bit a long headline. Let's say the US, even though with Trump not being a reliable partner, is still the most important alliance for South Korea.
Don.
South Korea looks for new relationships, but falls back on its historic alliance with the U.S.
Yeah, mine is pretty much to the same effect, which is, U.S.-South Korea alliance strong, security still firm.
All right, we'll leave it at that. And that wraps up our discussion on the non-renewal of GSOMIA and the current state of military alliances. We'll be back next week for another discussion on the latest issues making headlines, so don't forget to tune back in. Thank you for watching and bye-bye.